Hey comrades, my name's William Morrison, your British Marxist-Leninist and anti-imperialist comrade based in Scotland. And this is part 5 of my series on the Green Book by Muammar al-Gaddafi. This is part 5 on plebiscites. Now, for everyone who doesn't know, a plebiscite is another word for a referendum. In other words, it's a direct vote on an important public question by the electorate. For example, in 2014, the Scottish independence referendum would have been classed as a plebiscite. It was a referendum. It was a direct question to the people of Scotland based on an important question. Similarly, in 2016, the Brexit referendum would have also been classed as a plebiscite. It was a direct decision made by the public. It traces back to the old Latin word for plebeian. It was essentially a plebeian's people's assembly. It was when people came together to discuss important issues and they'd vote on it and they'd take actions and stuff like that. It traces back to the historical civilization of ancient Greece, where the plebs, the people of the community, came together to discuss important political decisions. It was the start of direct democracy. That's just some historical context and the definition of what a plebiscite actually is. There's no point in watching this video if you don't know what it means. I didn't know, I had to look it up, so I'm glad I did. But anyway, so this is the series where I take one of Muammar al-Gaddafi's 28 points from the Green Book and I make a video on each point. So this is part 5, this is my 5th episode, and we're going to be reading and discussing part 5, which is on plebiscites. So I'll just jump straight into the video. Plebiscites are a fraud against democracy. Those who vote yes and no do not in fact express their free will, but rather are silenced by the modern conception of democracy, as they are not allowed to say more than yes or no. Such a system is oppressive and tyrannical. Those who vote no should express the reasons and why they did not say yes, and those who say yes should verify such agreement and why they did not vote no. Both should state their wishes and be able to justify their yes or no vote. What then is the path to be taken by humanity in order to conclusively rid itself of the elements of dictatorship and tyranny? The intricate problem is the case of democracy is reflected in the nature of the instrument of government, which is demonstrated by conflicts of classes, parties, and individuals. The elections and plebiscites were invented to cover the failure of these unsuccessful experiments to solve this problem. The solution lies in finding an instrument of government other than those which are subject to conflict and which represent only one fraction of the society. That is to say, an instrument of government which is not a party, class, sect, or a tribe, but an instrument of government which is the people as a whole. In other words, we seek an instrument of government which neither represents the people nor speaks in their name. There can be no representation in lieu of the people, and representation is a fraud. If such an instrument can be found, then the problem is solved and true popular democracy is realised. Thus, humankind would have terminated the eras of tyranny and dictatorships and replaced them with the authority of the people. The Green Book presents the ultimate solution to the problem of the instrument of government and indicates for the masses the path upon which they can advance from the age of dictatorship to that of genuine democracy. This new theory is based on the authority of the people, without representation or deputation. It achieves direct democracy in an orderly and effective form. It is superior to the older attempts at direct democracy, which were impractical because they lacked popular organisations at base levels. That was essentially it, comrades. It was only about 1.5 pages, very, very short read. I did tell you, these reads are very short. There's 28 of them, and each of them are fairly short. So some notes, I guess, or some things to take away from this video is probably the last part. The last part summarises this section quite well, and it's this new theory is based on the authority of the people. That is essentially Muammar al-Gaddafi's ideal idea of democracy. It's his perfect case study of what a democracy is. It has to be direct. The authority, the political authority of the country should be the people themselves, the masses. They shouldn't be represented by a small group of people, regardless of what tribe or class or party they came from. They cannot be, as individuals, representative of all the people. He's mentioned this in prior points. So his idea of democracy, no matter how utopian and idealistic it might sound from a Marxist perspective, this is the lens that I'm coming from this, a Marxist-Leninist perspective, it does seem or sound a bit utopian and a bit idealist. But it might not be. I might be wrong here. Because under Libya, we did have the political system of Jamahiriya, and that was direct democracy, and it was very, very effective, and it was widely popular by the people of Libya. What we had, I mean, the next video I'm going to discuss will be on that. It will be about the popular conferences and the People's Committee, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But yeah, there was People's Congresses and committees all over the country of Libya, where thousands of people, women and men, could come together in these huge buildings, in these huge arenas, and they could argue and debate about really important issues facing Libya. And they'd come to a popular vote. This, in Muammar al-Gaddafi's eyes, was a lot more pure and a lot more transparent and a lot more fair and free democracy than any Western liberal democracy could ever achieve. There was no minority government looking out for the people or with vested interests. There was no representative body of a political elite representing only themselves, which a lot of representative democracies have in the West. The government was impartial to political decisions. That was the idea. It says here in this section, a government which neither represents the people nor speaks in their name. So this kind of political ideology or this idea of democracy that Muammar Gaddafi is espousing here, it's a system in which the government doesn't influence the people a certain way. It listens to the people. It doesn't try to influence or force them to believe in something. It isn't a representative body with vested interests elsewhere and don't actually represent the people like we see in most Western liberal democracies, which are often degenerate and liberal and really serves the capital. It serves money and it serves the free markets and the neoliberal ideology. That's what most liberal democracies serve here in the West. It's money, it's millionaires, it's oligarchy. That's the kind of stuff that benefits from these kind of democracies. The Libyan style of democracy was very different. There was no vested interest. There was no priority over making money or making a mass profit by exploiting people. It was a government which was impartial to political ideas. Sorry about that, my dog just came in my room. It was a government which was impartial to political ideas. It didn't want to force people. It listened to people and it accepted the vote. It didn't do anything which would have been imposed on the people against their will. They didn't do anything or make any decision that wasn't first asked the opinions of the people. It was, historically speaking, I mean, you can look this up. This isn't some sort of conspiracy theory. This isn't some fringe history. This is quite well known. I mean, the successes under Gaddafi in Libya are quite well documented. I mean, even Western journalists and Western mainstream media sources, they often give credit to Libya under Gaddafi. It was extremely stable. It was very, very democratic. It was a different kind of democracy than we have here in the West, but it was certainly still democratic. And some people, like pan-Arabs or Pan-Africanists or Baathists or Arab socialists, they would argue that Gaddafi's democracy was the most purest form of democracy that we've seen yet in the world. That's definitely something to think about. But essentially, the main takeaway of this section of this series is that Gaddafi wasn't very much a fan of plebiscites or referendums. He didn't think that they were exactly representative of the people. He would have liked more nuance. So, for example, in the Scottish independence referendum in 2014, there was a yes-no decision. In the Brexit referendum, it was remain or leave. It was a binary choice. You weren't asked to give a reason or a justification. And I guess that is fair. I mean, that would, if we did have that nuance, If every single voter had to give a reason why they chose something, it would take months to process all of that data. Months, maybe even years, at the rate that liberal democracies take to do things. So again, maybe quite utopian, maybe quite idealistic, but certainly good ideas, and it worked for Libya, and I'm sure it can work in other places too. But yeah, so that was part 5. Only 10 minutes, very, very short video. Like I said earlier, the next video will be on popular conferences and the People's Committee. So that will be a little more in depth about the political structure of Libya. But that'll be for the next video. So I'll see you in the next video, and yeah, I'll see you later. Cheerio.